I woke up with my back wedged against warm bronze, my cheek pressed into a puddle of glowing blue condensation, and 12 priests screaming like I had personally murdered the sun. That was my first clue, that I was not in the service tunnel under Bay 4 back home. My second clue was the ceiling. It was not a ceiling, actually. It was a massive circular engine hanging above me, larger than a cathedral dome, rotating slowly inside rings of gold, glass, and pale fire. Gears the size of carriage wheels turned inside transparent crystal housings. Pipes hummed with a sound so deep I felt it in my teeth. Blue-white mana pulsed through ribbed channels like blood through veins. And I knew, with the awful certainty of someone who had spent 9 years crawling under industrial machinery, that something inside it was overheating. Then memories hit me. Not mine. Hers. A narrow bed in a bell-ringer dormitory. A city of white towers and copper roofs. Priests in silver masks. A name people said with impatience. Ilyra Dane. 29 years old. Lower shrine servant. Third-rank bell assistant. Orphan, unblessed, unimportant. And apparently, judging by the circle of furious holy men above me, the newest criminal in the royal temple city of Vare. One priest pointed a trembling staff at my face and shouted, "She has placed her common hands upon the Heart Relic." Another gasped, "The chamber seal is broken." A third whispered, "High Priest Malrec must hear of this." That name landed in my new skull like a dropped wrench. High Priest Malrec. The holy voice of the kingdom. The only man, supposedly, who could hear the will of the ancient divine artifact that powered the temple city, heated the palace wards, purified the river gates, and blessed the royal bloodline every midsummer. Also, according to the memories I had just inherited, the man who liked to make servants disappear when they noticed things they were not supposed to notice. I tried to sit up. My left wrist scraped against the bronze casing beneath me, and something cold snapped around my skin. A bracelet. Old, dark, heavy, made of blackened silver links and a cracked oval face. I did not remember wearing it, but the moment I looked at the glowing engine overhead, the bracelet flickered. 3 symbols appeared. A rising red coil. A blue crescent with a missing center. A trembling gold needle. I stared at them. Pressure, coolant loss, flow instability. Not words, not numbers, just vague symbols, annoyingly dramatic symbols. But I had spent my old life fixing pressure regulators, heat exchangers, corroded lines, jammed bearings, and ancient machines held together by habit and unpaid overtime. A glowing bracelet did not need to explain itself perfectly. The machine above me was not a god. It was equipment. Sacred equipment, sure. Beautiful equipment. Possibly kingdom-sized, magic-fed, and terrifyingly undermaintained equipment. But still equipment. And equipment did not care how loudly priests prayed at it. If pressure rose, if coolant failed, if heat had nowhere to go, the result was not prophecy. It was rupture. The guards dragged me out from under the engine before I could check the lower manifold. My knees hit the floor hard enough to send a shock up my spine. The temple chamber spread around me in impossible grandeur. 7 rings of polished white stone, 48 silver prayer bells hanging from archways, and hundreds of tiny maintenance hatches painted over with holy script. Painted over. I almost laughed. In my first life, that was how you knew a facility was doomed. Someone had covered the access panels because they were ugly. The priests shoved me to my knees in front of a tall man, descending the central stair. High Priest Malrec wore layered robes of ivory and sun-gold thread. His beard was perfectly combed. His eyes were kind in the way locked doors are kind. Behind him, 4 senior priests carried polished tablets full of recorded miracles. He looked at the broken chamber seal, then at me. "Ilyra Dane," he said, as if my name tasted cheap. "A bell servant beneath the Heart Relic." I swallowed. I woke up there. That was true. Not helpful, but true. Malrec's gaze sharpened. "You touched what only the consecrated may approach." I think something is wrong with the lower cooling system. The silence after that was so complete I could hear the engine click. Not hum. Click. A slow metallic tick between pulses. Bad bearing, misaligned gear, heat expansion. Maybe all three, because apparently this kingdom believed preventive maintenance was a personality flaw. Malrec smiled. It was a public smile, the kind designed for witnesses. The Heart Relic does not have a cooling system, he said softly. It has divine breath. There it was. The exact kind of sentence that gets people killed in factories, mines, ships, refineries, and apparently magical temple cities. I looked up at the engine again. The red coil on my bracelet pulsed twice. I should have stayed quiet. Unfortunately, I had transmigrated with a mechanic's instincts, and mechanics are physically incapable of ignoring a machine making the wrong noise. It has 6 lower thermal channels, I said. One is blocked, one is leaking, and one is venting back into the pressure chamber. A junior priest made a strangled sound. Malrec's smile did not move, but his eyes changed. Not fear. Recognition. Not of the problem. Of the threat. He stepped closer and lowered his voice enough that only the first ring of priests could hear. Servant, he said, you will stop touching the relic. You will stop speaking about holy matters. You will return to your bell tower and wait for judgment. The bracelet warmed against my wrist. The engine clicked again. I looked at the priests, the guards, the painted-over hatches, and Malrec's flawless robes. Then I understood the shape of the trap. If I argued, I was a heretic. If I repaired it without permission, I was a criminal. If I did nothing, the machine would fail. And if it failed during the royal blessing ceremony in 2 days, Malrec would blame the unblessed servant found beneath the relic. Me. So I lowered my head. Yes, High Priest, I said. I will stop touching it. Malrec looked satisfied. That was his first mistake. The bell tower dormitory had 14 beds, 3 cracked windows, and exactly 1 working wash basin if you kicked the copper pipe twice before dawn. I knew that because I woke there the next morning with Ilyra Dane's memories settling into place like badly sorted drawers. She had been born in the outer district, left at the temple steps at 3 days old, and raised on bell schedules, floor scrubbing, and the firm belief that holy people were allowed to be cruel as long as they used soft voices. She had no noble blood, no formal blessing, no family seal, no patron, and no visible mana talent. At 29, she was older than most apprentices and still ranked below boys who had entered the temple 6 months earlier because they came from better houses. Her job was simple. Ring the dawn bell. Ring the noon bell. Ring the dusk bell. Clean the bell frames. Do not ask why the Heart Relic groaned at 3:17 every morning. The last memory was the strangest. The night before I woke up, Ilyra had been sent to polish the lower prayer rail. She heard a sharp hiss behind a sealed panel. She pressed her hand against it. The panel burned her palm, then something beneath the floor opened. After that, there was only blue light. Then me. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the bracelet. It looked old enough to have opinions. The oval face was cracked down the middle. When I tapped it, nothing happened. When I turned my wrist toward the distant temple engine, faint symbols crawled through the glass. A red coil. A blue crescent. A gold needle. Then a 4th mark appeared. 3 black dots inside a silver ring. I had no idea what that meant. Fantastic. A magical diagnostic tool that communicated like a moody dashboard warning light. Still, vague data was better than sacred denial. In my old life, I had worked in a municipal energy plant outside a city where nobody cared about machinery until hot water stopped reaching wealthy apartments. I knew pumps. I knew old pipes. I knew corrosion that looked harmless until it was. I knew the particular arrogance of managers who thought maintenance reports were optional because nothing has exploded yet. That knowledge had not made me rich. It had not made me glamorous. It had mostly made me tired, underpaid, and very good at hearing when something expensive was about to fail. Now I was in a world that worshipped a machine and punished people for understanding it. Naturally, I felt right at home. The first person to speak to me that morning was Tomas. He was a thin apprentice bell ringer with ink on his fingers, dark curls that never sat flat, and the nervous posture of someone who had apologized to furniture before bumping into it. He stopped beside my bed, holding a tray with bread, watered milk, and a small cup of bitter green temple tonic. "Ilyra," he whispered, "are you still alive?" I looked at the tray. Apparently the temple's mercy includes breakfast. He almost smiled, then remembered we were probably both in danger. "I heard they found you under the heart." "They did. They say you broke the chamber seal." "I did not break it." He glanced toward the door. "The priests say the relic was angry." "The relic is overheating." Tomas went very still. That was when I knew. "You've heard it too," I said. He swallowed. "Heard what?" "The click between pulses." His fingers tightened around the tray. For 5 seconds, he looked like he might run. Then he set the tray down, closed the dormitory door, and lowered his voice. "Since I was 11, he said. "It used to happen only in winter, then before storms. Now it happens every morning. I told Senior Bellmaster Oren once. He slapped me and said the heart does not click, it sings." I glanced toward the far wall, where the engine's hum vibrated through stone. "It clicks." Tomas let out a breath like he had been holding it for years. "Thank the bells," he whispered. "I thought I was cursed." "No, just observant, which is apparently worse here." He gave me an anxious look. "You should not say that." "I have noticed." He sat on the neighboring bed, still watching the door. "High Priest Malrec came to the tower at dawn. He told Bellmaster Oren you are not to enter the lower rings again, not even for cleaning. If you touch a service panel, you'll be taken to the sun cells." "Good," I said. Tomas blinked. "Good. It means he gave a clear order." "That sounds bad." "It is bad, but it's also useful." In every facility I had ever worked in, vague blame was dangerous. Written orders were leverage. Clear instructions made responsibility traceable, especially when those instructions were stupid. "Does the temple keep incident logs?" I asked. Tomas looked confused. "Prayer logs." "No, maintenance logs, fault records, temperature readings, inspection schedules." He stared at me. I stared back. "Oh no," I said. "Please tell me there are inspection schedules." He rubbed the back of his neck. "The priests record miracles. They record bell times. They record royal offerings. They record visions High Priest Malrec receives from the heart." "Visions?" "Yes." "Does anyone record pressure?" "What is pressure?" I closed my eyes. Somewhere, in whatever universe handled transmigration assignments, someone had a very dark sense of humor. I spent the next 20 minutes interrogating Tomas about the temple rules. The Heart Relic powered 5 city wards, 12 aqueduct purification gates, 3 royal healing chambers, and the blessing platform used once a year to renew the king's divine mandate. That ceremony was in 2 days. 48 hours. At noon on the day of radiance, King Erwin would stand beneath the Heart Relic while Malrec claimed to hear the relic bless the crown. Every noble house, guild master, military commander, and foreign envoy in Vayer would be present. Which meant if the pressure chamber ruptured then, it would not happen quietly. I asked Tomas for paper. He brought me 11 folded bell schedule sheets, a dull charcoal stick, and an apology for the quality. I started a maintenance log. Time, sound, vibration, visible heat shimmer, bracelet symbols, temple order given, witnesses present. Tomas watched as I wrote. "You really think writing it down matters?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Because machines fail in patterns. People lie in patterns too. Logs catch both." The bracelet warmed again. This time, the black dots inside the silver ring pulsed once. Maybe that meant record confirmed. Or maybe it meant I was about to die. Either way, I wrote it down. My first repair in Veyer was not on the sacred engine. It was on a bell. Specifically, Dawn Bell 7, which had been ringing half a beat late for 3 years because its counterweight chain had stretched. Its pivot pin had worn into an oval, and the apprentice assigned to it had been told the delay was a sign of humility. I stood on the bell tower platform before sunrise, hands clasped behind my back, obeying Malrec's order not to touch the Heart Relic. He had said nothing about bells. Tomas held the rope and looked like he expected lightning to crawl up it. "If Bellmaster Oren sees you adjusting that," he whispered, "he'll report you." "I am not adjusting anything holy," I said. "I am preventing a 200-pound bell from eventually falling through the floor." That is somehow less comforting. The bracelet showed nothing when I looked at the bell. Interesting. So it responded only to relic systems, mana flow, or machinery connected to the heart. The bell tower, however, gave me something better than magic. Sound. I asked Tomas to ring Dawn Bell 7 slowly. He pulled. The bell swung. The first note was rich and deep. The second had a tiny scrape beneath it. The third lagged. Not much. Maybe 1/6 of a beat. But in a bell sequence designed to synchronize with a city-sized engine, 1/6 mattered. "Again," I said. He rang it 5 more times. I crouched beside the pivot frame and pointed without touching. "See that pin? It's worn down on one side. The chain compensates, then slips. The delay is not humility. It's metal fatigue." Tomas stared at it. "You can hear that." "Yes." "You heard all that from one bell. 5 rings don't reduce my genius." This time he did smile. It changed his whole face. "We waited until Bellmaster Oren left to scold the West Tower boys, then used a spare cotter pin, 2 copper washers, and a strip of oilcloth from the supply cabinet. Tomas did the touching. I gave instructions. It took 17 minutes. At dawn, Bell 7 rang on time. Nobody applauded. Nobody even noticed. But the Heart Relic did. The moment the full bell sequence rolled across the temple city, my bracelet flashed gold. The trembling needle steadied for exactly 4 seconds. Across the courtyard, far below the tower, the engine's morning hum smoothed. Only slightly. Then the click returned. But there it was. First milestone. The bells were not just ceremonial. They were external timing regulators. Their rhythms synchronized something in the Heart Relic's flow cycle. The priests had mistaken control signals for worship. I wrote that down too. Tomas hovered over my shoulder as I drew a crude diagram of bell timing, lower channels, and the engine pulse. "You think the bells talk to the heart?" he asked. "I think the bells tell part of the system when to open and close. Like instructions." "Exactly." He looked offended on behalf of every hymn he had ever sung. "So half our prayers are operating procedures." "Possibly more than half." He sat down very slowly. I softened. "That does not make them meaningless, Tomas." "No. No, it means your work matters more than they told you." He looked at his hands. That landed somewhere deep. Later that morning, the first official punishment arrived. I was summoned to the lower refectory, where 30 servants and apprentices stood in rows, while Senior Bellmaster Oren read Malrec's decree. Ilyra Dane was removed from all duties near the central shrine. Ilyra Dane was forbidden to approach the Heart Relic's inner 3 rings. Ilyra Dane was declared under spiritual review for possible desecration. Ilyra Dane was to continue menial service only and speak to no noble, priest, or royal officer about imagined flaws in divine operation. It was very thorough. I appreciated that. Clear orders make beautiful evidence. Oren finished reading and looked at me with the smug relief of a small man holding borrowed authority. "You will clean ash gutters until judgment." I bowed, "Of course." His eyes narrowed, disappointed that I was not crying. "Do you have nothing to say?" "Yes," I said. "Please add the time of this order to the tower log." A few apprentices looked up. Orin frowned. "Why?" "For accuracy. It is not necessary." "Then write that you refuse to log it." His face reddened. "Are you threatening me?" "No, I'm documenting you." That was the first time I saw Tomas cover his mouth to hide a laugh. It was also the first time Malrec's people started watching me properly. By noon, 2 acolytes followed me through the ash corridors. They were not subtle. They wore polished sandals and whispered every 3 minutes, which echoed beautifully off the stone. I cleaned gutters. I scrubbed soot. I did not touch a single relic panel. And every hour, when the heart groaned through the walls, I wrote down the time. 10:03, brief high whine. 11:17, heat pulse through east floor. 12:00, bell sequence unstable from south tower. 12:22, faint chemical smell near ash vent. Tomas found me during the midday meal and slipped me a folded scrap. He had copied 6 years of bell irregularities from old tower notes. The pattern was ugly. The click had started after a winter freeze 6 years ago. It worsened after the temple stopped draining condensation from the lower channels 4 years ago. It became daily after Malrec ordered the old maintenance stairs sealed 11 months ago because dust offended the relic. Dust. The kingdom's holy machine was dying because a high priest did not like dust. At 3:17 that afternoon, the engine made the sound Tomas had described. Click. Pause. Hiss. My bracelet flashed the blue crescent so brightly it hurt. Second milestone. The coolant failure was no longer hidden. It was accelerating. High Priest Malrec summoned me privately 6 hours after I asked Orin to document his refusal. That told me 2 things. First, Malrec had informants in every ring of the temple. Second, he was worried enough to deal with a bell servant himself. The meeting chamber smelled of incense, old parchment, and fear polished into ritual. Sunlight poured through stained glass behind Malrec, painting his white robes in gold and red. He stood beside a table holding 9 miracle tablets, each carved with official accounts of times the Heart Relic had spoken through him. I looked at the tablets. Each miracle dated shortly after a mechanical symptom. A sudden heat surge became divine displeasure. A pressure release became a blessing wind. A coolant purge became sacred mist. A timing fault became prophecy. The man had built a career on interpreting maintenance alarms as holy messages. Honestly, it was almost impressive. In the way arson can be impressive if you ignore the fire. Malrec gestured for the guards to leave us. They closed the doors, not fully. One remained open a finger width. A witness gap. Careless. "Ilyra," he said gently, "you seem unsettled since your incident." My incident being waking up under the machine. His expression chilled. "The heart. Of course. You are a servant with an anxious mind. That is forgivable, but spreading fear before the royal blessing is not. I have spread nothing. You asked for orders to be logged." "Yes." "You have been writing observations." "Yes." "About matters beyond your station. I can observe from the ash gutters." He stepped closer. "You believe yourself clever." "No, I believe copper expands under heat." His jaw tightened. There, the mask slipped for half a second. He was not offended by blasphemy. He was offended by competence outside his control. He lowered his voice. "Listen carefully. The blessing ceremony will occur in 42 hours. The king will stand beneath the heart. The city will witness divine favor. You will remain in the ash corridor, silent, grateful that I have not sent you to the sun cells." The bracelet warmed under my sleeve. I kept my hand still. "And if the relic vents during the ceremony?" I asked. "It will not. If the lower pressure chamber ruptures." It cannot. That is not an answer. His smile returned, thin as wire. The heart obeys faith. No, I said, it obeys pressure. The room went quiet. Malrec looked at me for a long moment, then laughed softly. You are dirt from the bell tower, wearing borrowed confidence. And you are a priest standing on a boiler. His face hardened. That was my calm warning, sharp enough to remember, simple enough to deny. You will stop, he said. No more notes, no more questions, no more speaking to apprentices, no more invented mechanical language. That is a formal order. Yes. Please have it entered into the temple record. He leaned in. I do not need ink to command you. No, I said, but ink survives panic. For a moment, I thought he might strike me. He did not. Men like Malrec rarely dirtied their hands when institutions could do it for them. Instead, he opened a drawer and removed a bronze token, stamped with a sunburst. With this, he said, I suspend you from bell access until after the ceremony. You will sleep in the ash store under guard. If you are found with charcoal, parchment, tools, or unauthorized company, you will be charged with sabotage. I looked at the token. There it was. Malicious compliance, wrapped in gold. He had not merely told me to stop touching the relic. Now he had ordered me to stop documenting it. During an act of failure. In a temple with 48 bells, 5 wards, and a king scheduled to stand under the pressure chamber in less than 2 days. I bowed. As you command, High Priest. His eyes narrowed. He expected fear. Instead, I gave him obedience. Because I had already written enough to start the trap, and he had just tightened it around himself. The ash store was beneath the east stair, next to a dead vent and 19 sacks of charcoal. The guard outside was a bored temple soldier named Wren who cared less about sacred law than staying awake. I was not allowed parchment. I was not allowed charcoal. I was not allowed visitors. So I used the soot under my thumbnail and wrote timestamps on the inside hem of my undersleeve. Not elegant, but I had logged worse on cardboard during night shifts when printers failed. At 8:40 p.m., the floor warmed. At 9:05, the dead vent coughed blue vapor. At 9:31, my bracelet showed the red coil and the blue crescent at the same time. At 10:10, Tomas arrived with a bucket. Wren blocked him. No visitors. Tomas lifted the bucket. Ash water. Bellmaster Oren said if she's being held in the ash store, she can scrub the ash store. Wren considered that with the deep moral conflict of a man choosing between boredom and effort. He stepped aside. Tomas entered, set down the bucket, and whispered, I brought no parchment. Good. I brought something worse. From inside the bucket, beneath a rag, he pulled out a strip of thin brass stamped with tiny bell marks. What is that? I whispered. Old bell calibration ribbon. We use them to mark timing drift. No one counts them as writing. I stared at him. Tomas blushed. You said logs matter. I did. So I thought, maybe metal survives panic too. I had known him for less than 24 hours, but in that moment, I decided if this world tried to hurt Tomas, I was going to become extremely inconvenient. We used a nail from the bucket handle to scratch marks into the brass ribbon. Time, symptom, sound, bracelet symbol. Tomas had a bell ringer's ear and a careful hand. He could distinguish 7 different kinds of hum from the heart through stone. That night became my 3rd milestone. Not repair. Not proof. A team. 1 mechanic with stolen memories, and 1 shy bell apprentice who had spent years being told his ears were wrong. At 11:48 p.m., the bracelet flashed a new symbol. A white ring split by a jagged line. I felt the floor shudder. Tomas looked up. What does that mean? I don't know. The dead vent hissed again. This time the vapor smelled metallic and sweet. I pressed my palm near the wall, not touching the vent, only feeling the air. Heat. Too much heat. I think, I said slowly, it means the pressure chamber has started cycling without enough coolant. Can we fix it? Not from here. He swallowed. How long? I thought about the rising frequency, the timing drift, the heat pulses, the blue vapor, the ceremony schedule. Less than 40 hours before it becomes obvious, I said. Maybe less before it becomes dangerous. Tomas went pale. Above us, the heart clicked again. This time, it did not stop after one click. It clicked 3 times. By morning, the city started noticing. Not the priests, of course. The priests had spent centuries training themselves not to notice anything inconvenient. But ordinary people noticed everything. At the North Aqueduct, the purification gate released bitter water for 6 minutes. In the lamp district, 22 street crystals flickered green instead of white. At the Royal Infirmary, 3 healing basins steamed hot enough to crack their silver rims. Each event had a holy explanation by breakfast. The bitter water was a call to repentance. The green lamps were a sign of approaching blessing. The cracked basins were proof the heart burned with royal strength. I heard all this from Ren, who liked gossip and had decided guarding me was less boring if he talked. I asked him how often the healing basins cracked. Never, he said. Then he frowned. I said nothing. It is one of life's great pleasures to watch someone have a thought for the first time. At 9:00, Senior Bellmaster Oren arrived with 2 acolytes and the expression of a man holding bad news he planned to enjoy. The High Priest has ordered you moved to the public repentance gallery for the ceremony, he announced. You will kneel with the other spiritual offenders, where all may see that mercy has been extended. Tomas, who was carrying an ash bucket, nearly dropped it. I kept my face blank. Public gallery. Perfect. Malrec wanted me visible. He wanted a scapegoat placed in view before the relic failed. That meant he planned to connect the failure to my desecration in real time. A classic management move. Create a villain before the audit. Will I be permitted to speak in my defense? I asked. Oren snorted. You will be permitted to weep. I'll prepare accordingly. His face twitched. After he left, Tomas whispered, This is bad. Yes. You sound pleased. I have complicated feelings. The bracelet symbols had changed again. The red coil now appeared almost constantly when I faced the central shrine. The blue crescent flickered every few minutes. The gold needle shook unless the bells rang in perfect sequence. The system, if I could call it that, still gave no words, but I had enough context now. Red coil, rising pressure or heat stress. Blue crescent, coolant flow disruption. Gold needle, timing or mana flow instability. Black dots in silver ring, recorded observation, maybe confirmed pattern. White split ring, chamber integrity stress. It did not solve the problem. It did not hand me a repair manual. It gave me vague warnings that required interpretation, like every cheap diagnostic panel ever built by a company that hated field technicians. Still, it was mine. And only I could read it. That mattered. At midday, I was escorted to clean the outer repentance gallery under supervision. From there, I could see the main ceremony hall. The Heart Relic hung above the royal blessing platform, glorious and terrifying. Priests had draped 300 feet of silver ribbon from the upper ring. Noble banners covered half the access stairs. Fresh incense burners stood directly in front of what I strongly suspected were emergency vent paths. I stared. They had blocked the vents. They had blocked the vents with decorative incense burners. I closed my eyes and breathed in through my nose. Tomas, sweeping beside me, whispered, Your eyebrow is doing the angry thing. They blocked the vent paths. Is that bad? I looked at him. He winced. Right pressure. I could not touch anything. I could not move anything. I could not write openly. Guards stood 12 steps away. So I swept near the nearest incense burner and accidentally dropped ash across the floor. Airflow revealed itself in thin gray streams. 3 vents were drawing poorly. One was backflowing. The ash curled outward instead of inward, carrying a faint blue shimmer. I nodded toward it. Tomas saw. His face drained of color. He swept the ash into a neat pile, then scratched 4 tiny marks into the underside of his broom handle where no one would notice. That was when a voice behind us said, "Still conspiring with servants, Ilyra." I turned. Malrec stood at the edge of the gallery with 2 royal clerks and a woman in a dark blue robe embroidered with the king's seal. Not a priest. An auditor. She had sharp eyes, iron gray hair, and no patience in her posture. Malrec's smile was smooth. "Lady Mareth, this is the unfortunate servant I mentioned. Her instability began after she violated the lower sanctum. We pray she finds humility." Lady Mareth studied me. "What did you violate?" she asked. "Apparently, a maintenance hatch." Malrec's smile froze. The auditor's eyebrow rose. I added, very politely, "I apologize. The temple refers to them as sanctum seals." Malrec cut in. "She speaks in confusion." "I speak in comparisons," I said. "Confusion is blocking a pressure vent with incense." Tomas made a tiny choking sound. The royal clerks stared at the incense burners. Malrec's voice sharpened. "Enough." Lady Mareth looked from me to the burners. "Pressure vent." "Decorative draft channel," Malrec said quickly. The auditor's gaze did not move. "Which is it?" The hall seemed to hold its breath. I could feel the trap opening. But not yet. Not without records, not without a public failure, not without authorization to touch the machine. So I lowered my head. "I am under order not to discuss imagined flaws," I said. Lady Mareth's eyes narrowed. Malrec's jaw tightened. "Beautiful. There are few things more suspicious to an auditor than a person explaining why a witness is not allowed to answer." Lady Mareth turned to Malrec. "I will review the ceremony safety record before tomorrow's blessing." "Of course," he said. His tone was honey. His eyes promised consequences. After they left, Tomas whispered, "You just made him angrier." "Yes." Was that wise? Probably not. Was it necessary? I watched the ash curl backward from the blocked vent. Yes. The final night before the ceremony, Malrec made his largest mistake. He falsified a miracle. At 7:00 p.m., with the city gathered for the eve prayers, the Heart Relic released a low groan that shook dust from the arches. Not a sacred groan. A structural groan. The kind of sound metal makes when expansion has run out of forgiveness. The red coil on my bracelet flared so hot the metal burned my wrist. The white split ring flashed 4 times. Blue vapor seeped from 2 seams above the lower platform. The crowd murmured. Even the priests looked frightened. Malrec stepped forward, lifted both hands, and declared, "The heart trembles with joy. It anticipates the royal blessing." That was when I knew he was done. Not because he lied. He had lied for years. Because he lied while the machine was actively warning him. He had heard it, he had seen it, he had smelled the coolant vapor. And he chose performance. I turned to Tomas, who stood behind the gallery rail. "Can you reach the old bell archive?" I whispered. He nodded shakily. "Maybe. I need anything about the first builder's safety laws." His eyes widened. "The forbidden cabinet. Is it forbidden because it is dangerous or because it is useful?" With this temple, probably both. "Good, be careful." He disappeared before the guards shifted. I spent the next 2 hours kneeling in the repentance gallery, apparently contemplating my sins while actually counting engine pulses. Normal cycle, 60 pulses per minute during evening prayer. Current cycle, 73. At 8:12, the south ring vibrated. At 8:46, one silver ribbon snapped from heat stress and floated down like a dying snake. At 9:03, The lower left chamber released a mist burst that priests called the breath of mercy. At 9:04, 6 nobles moved farther away from the platform. Nobles are very good at sensing danger when it might touch them personally. At 9:30, Tomas returned. He was pale, dusty, and shaking with the pure terror of a shy person who had successfully committed a useful crime. He knelt beside me and slid a folded oilcloth under the hem of my robe. Inside was a thin sheet of hammered tin, covered in old script. "I couldn't read all of it," he whispered, "but your words were there." My words. Pressure, venting, chamber, public override. My heart kicked. I tilted the tin toward the nearest lamp. The script was archaic, but Ilyra's temple memories helped enough to piece it together. It was not a prayer. It was a safety protocol. The First Builder's Law, Section 12. If the heart displays 3 signs of chamber distress before a royal rite, any sworn servant of the temple may request a public condition test. Any refusal by priestly authority must be recorded. If rupture risk is confirmed before witnesses of crown, guild, and temple, ritual command transfers temporarily to the nearest competent maintainer until immediate danger passes. Nearest competent maintainer. Not highest priest. Not noble overseer. Maintainer. I almost laughed loud enough to get arrested. The kingdom had forgotten the most important law because it sounded boring. Hidden leverage. Fair, written, old, public, impossible for Malrec to dismiss if the auditor saw it. I looked at Tomas. "You just saved a lot of people." He swallowed. "Please do not say that until we are not kneeling under the angry machine." Reasonable. At 10:00 p.m., Lady Mareth entered the gallery alone. She did not look at me at first. She looked at the heart, then the blocked vents, then the snapped silver ribbon, then me. "You are very inconvenient," she said quietly. "I've been told." High Priest Malrec submitted the ceremony safety record. And it contains no mention of vents, pressure, coolant, heat, timing drift, or your warning. Shocking. Her mouth tightened, possibly fighting a smile. "It does contain 11 references to your spiritual agitation." I am spiritually agitated by bad documentation. Tomas coughed into his sleeve. Lady Mareth crouched near the rail. "Do you have proof of what you claimed?" I looked toward the guards. She said, "They are mine." That changed things. I unfolded the oilcloth and showed her the tin safety protocol, the brass calibration strip, and the soot marks inside my sleeve. I explained quickly. Not as prophecy, not as rebellion. As maintenance. Pressure signs, coolant failure, timing instability, blocked vents, bell drift, heat stress, chamber rupture risk, 48-hour countdown, ceremony exposure. She listened without interrupting. Good auditors are rare in any universe. When I finished, she tapped the brass ribbon. "These times correspond to ward flickers reported in the city." They would. "And you believe the relic may rupture during the blessing?" "No," I said. "I believe it will begin emergency venting during the blessing. Whether it ruptures depends on whether those incense burners stay where they are and whether the lower coolant line fully fails." "How long to repair?" "If I can access the lower panel, clear the blocked channel, open the vent path, and resynchronize the bells, maybe 90 minutes for emergency stabilization, longer for proper repair." "You are a bell servant." "I was a mechanic before I woke up here." She stared at me. "Right." That sounded insane. I sighed. "I understand old machines. That is the relevant part." The heart groaned above us again. Lady Mareth stood. "Tomorrow at noon," she said. "If there are 3 public signs, request the condition test." Malrec would try to stop me. Everyone would be watching. The king would be under the relic. The chamber would be near rupture. And I would be kneeling in the perfect place to be blamed or believed. No pressure. Well, Actually, a lot of pressure. The day of radiance began with 48 bells ringing out of sync. Only by fractions. Most people heard glory. Tomas and I heard disaster. The royal temple filled from the outer doors inward. Nobles arrived in jeweled collars. Guild masters wore formal seals. Foreign envoys carried tribute boxes. The king's guard lined the blessing platform in white armor. Above them all, the Heart Relic rotated too quickly inside its golden rings. The engine's hum had climbed half an octave overnight. That was never good. I knelt in the repentance gallery with 12 other accused offenders, though most had committed normal temple crimes like unpaid candle fees or drunken singing during moon prayers. A woman beside me whispered, "What are you here for?" "Maintenance disagreement." She nodded like that explained everything. Malrec entered last. Of course he did. He wore a crown-like sun circlet and robes so heavy with gold thread that 2 acolytes had to lift the hem. The crowd bowed. The priests began the rite of listening. Incense rose in thick white columns, flowing directly across the blocked vents. My bracelet burned. Red coil. Blue crescent. Gold needle. White split ring. All at once. 4 warnings. No numbers, no words, just a cracked bracelet screaming in symbols. At 11:45, King Erwin entered. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with tired eyes and a careful expression. Beside him walked Lady Mareth carrying a black record case. Good. The auditor had come armed with paperwork. The king took his place beneath the heart. I felt the floor vibrate through my knees. Malrec lifted his hands. "People of Vaer," he called, voice echoing through the hall. "Today the heart will speak through its chosen servant, as it has for 19 years. Chosen servant. Interesting phrase for man who locked the maintenance stairs. He began the chant. The bells answered. Dawn bell 7 rang clean. South bell 3 lagged. West bell 12 scraped. The heart shuddered. First sign. A blue mist burst from the lower seam and rolled across the blessing platform. The crowd gasped. Malrec smiled broadly. The heart releases mercy. I stood. Guards moved immediately. Lady Mareth raised one hand. They stopped. My voice came out steady, which surprised me because my pulse was trying to escape through my ears. First sign of chamber distress, coolant vapor from lower seam. Malrec turned slowly. His expression was almost tender, like he was about to forgive me in public and ruin me in private. "Poor child," he said, still lost in fearful imagination. The heart gave a metallic crack. Not loud, but clear. Second sign. A silver decorative band along the lower ring warped outward, bending from heat stress. It popped free and clattered onto the platform 6 feet from the king. The royal guards stepped in front of him. I raised my voice. Second sign, heat deformation of lower chamber band. Murmurs spread. Malrec's smile thinned. "Remove her." Lady Mareth opened her black record case. "No." One word. Beautifully delivered. Malrec stared. "This is a holy rite." "This is a royal structure powering 5 city wards," she said. "Continue, and I will record that you denied visible distress before crown witnesses." He looked at the king. The king looked at the warped band. For the first time, Malrec seemed to realize the room was not entirely his. Then the third sign arrived. The bells rang the noon sequence. The heart failed to answer on the 7th pulse. It skipped. 1 full beat. The entire hall felt it, not heard it, felt it like the city's heart had stumbled inside its chest. Then the pressure chamber screamed. Not a human scream, not a monster scream, a high metal shriek from trapped force looking for a way out. People cried out. Nobles stumbled back. One incense burner toppled, revealing a vent beneath it glowing blue-white. I stepped down from the gallery. Third sign, Timing failure and pressure surge before royal right. Under First Builder's Law, Section 12, I request a public condition test. Malrec's face went white. Not angry. White. Because he knew the law. He had counted on everyone else forgetting it. Lady Mareth lifted the hammered tin sheet. The request is valid. Malrec recovered fast. I will give him that. This woman is under spiritual review for desecration, he snapped. She has no authority. I pulled the brass calibration strip from my sleeve. I am a sworn servant of the temple. You formally ordered me to stop touching the relic 46 hours ago. You suspended me from bell access 31 hours ago. You forbade documentation during active distress 26 hours ago. Every order was witnessed. I held up my marked sleeve. The machine continued failing after I obeyed. The crowd went silent. Malrec's eyes flicked to the king. Too late. Lady Mareth took the brass strip, examined the marks, then gave it to the royal clerk. Record submitted, she said. I turned toward the king and bowed. Your Majesty, the heart is not angry. It is overheating. The lower coolant channel is blocked, the vent paths are obstructed, and the pressure chamber is cycling without relief. If the ceremony continues, the platform may rupture. The priests hissed. The king's voice cut through them. How do you know this? I lifted my wrist. The bracelet's cracked face glowed with frantic symbols. Because this old diagnostic bracelet reacts to the relic systems, I said. And because in my old life, before I woke in this world, I repaired machines for a living. There it was. The truth. Insane, unverifiable, and still less absurd than calling coolant vapor mercy. Malrec laughed sharply. She admits madness. No, Tomas said. Every head turned. Poor Tomas looked like he might faint, but he stepped forward holding his bell logs. I heard the clicking for years, he said. I reported it twice. I was told to stay silent. The bells have been drifting. She fixed Dawn Bell 7 and the heart stabilized for 4 seconds. He held up the old notes. I have 6 years of records. I had never been prouder of anyone. The heart shrieked again. The blue vent glow turned white. The king looked at Malrec. Can you stabilize it? Malrec opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because miracles are easy, until someone asks for a wrench. The king turned to me. Can you? I looked at the blocked vents, the sealed lower hatch, the trembling chamber, and the crowd waiting to see whether I was heretic, fool, or the only practical person in the room. Yes, I said. But I need authority, 4 strong people, 2 bell ringers, every incense burner moved away from the vents, and no one praying loudly beside my ear. The king blinked. Then, unbelievably, he smiled. Granted. That was the moment Malrec's miracles began to die. Emergency repairs are always ugly. Anyone who tells you otherwise has only repaired things in stories. The moment the king gave permission, the ceremony dissolved into controlled panic. Lady Mareth cleared the platform with the voice of someone who had been waiting her entire career to order nobles around. Royal guards dragged incense burners away from the vents. Priests fluttered uselessly until I started assigning them tasks that sounded enough like ritual to keep them moving. You, open those side shutters. That is not. Do you want the sacred breath to stagnate? He ran. Useful language matters. I sent Tomas and another bell ringer. A sharp-eyed girl named Sella to the west and south towers with exact timing instructions. Dawn Bell 7 would anchor the sequence. South Bell 3 needed to be pulled half a beat early. West Bell 12 needed to be skipped on the 3rd cycle to prevent feedback. Tomas repeated the instructions twice. His voice shook only once. Then he ran like the city depended on him, because it did. The lower maintenance hatch was painted over with 11 layers of holy lacquer. I stared at it for 2 seconds. Tool, I said. A royal guard handed me a ceremonial spear. Not that kind of tool. After a brief and embarrassing delay, someone found an actual pry bar from a lamp keeper's cart. The first priest who tried to stop me was silenced by Lady Mareth saying, "Noted," which is the most terrifying word an auditor can use. The hatch opened with a wet crack. Heat rolled out. Inside was a narrow crawl space lined with copper pipes, crystal valves, gear housings, and enough corrosion to make my old supervisor appear in my memory just to swear. The bracelet shifted. For the first time, the vague symbols arranged into a pattern around the cracked face. Red coil near the upper left. Blue crescent lower right. Gold needle pulsing toward a gear assembly. White split ring around the main chamber outline. Still not a manual, but close enough. I crawled in. The space was tight, hot, and smelled of metal, mineral scale, and old neglect. My palms slid on condensation. Mana pulsed through translucent pipes inches from my face. One wrong move would probably burn me badly, so naturally 300 important people watched from behind me. No pressure. Again, terrible phrase. The blocked coolant line was exactly where the bracelet suggested. A blue crystal tube fed into a bronze manifold, but the flow had narrowed to a trembling thread. Mineral buildup crusted the intake. Worse, the bypass valve had been tied shut with a ceremonial gold cord. I stared at it. A gold cord. Someone had tied the emergency bypass shut because it looked more holy that way. "Malrec," I called from inside the hatch. "Did you order decorative cords placed on the lower valves?" Silence. Lady Mareth repeated, louder. "High Priest Malrec, answer for the royal record." His voice came out tight. The cords marked sanctified components. They disabled the bypass. It was not active. It is an emergency bypass. The entire point is that it becomes active during emergencies. I cut the cord with a small blade Sella had lent me. The valve refused to move. Of course it did. Corroded. I tapped it gently, then harder, feeling the vibration. Not stuck at the handle, stuck at the stem. I needed heat differential, leverage, and controlled timing. "Sella," I shouted. She leaned into the hatch opening. "When Tomas starts the modified bell sequence, count 8 pulses, then tell the guards to pull the vent shutters fully open." "How will I know?" "You'll feel the floor drop." That sounds horrifying. It is also accurate. I braced the pry bar against the valve handle and waited. The bells began. 1, 2, 3. The heart resisted. 4, 5. The gold needle on my bracelet steadied. 6, 7, 8. The floor vibration dipped. "Now," Sella shouted. Air roared through the opened vents. The pressure shifted just enough. I pulled. The valve screamed, moved half an inch, stuck again, then broke free. Blue coolant surged through the line so violently, the pipe kicked against its brackets. The crowd outside gasped as the heart's shriek dropped into a lower hum. Not safe yet. Better. Better is where repairs begin. The bracelet's blue crescent dimmed. I crawled deeper toward the gear assembly. The clicking was louder here. A timing gear had expanded under heat and started striking its guard plate. The guard plate was warped. The gear teeth were not broken yet, but they would be if the ceremony cycle continued. I had no replacement parts. I had one pry bar, 2 burned fingers, a ceremonial knife, and a room full of priests who had spent 19 years calling lubrication oil, consecrated amber. I asked for the amber. A junior priest brought a golden vial reverently. I opened it, sniffed, and nearly laughed. High-temperature lubricant. They had been anointing statues with machine oil. Honestly, that was the most religious thing they had done correctly. I lubricated the gear teeth, loosened the warped guard plate, and wedged it 3 fingerwidths back using a broken lacquer chip from the hatch frame. Temporary, ugly, effective. The click softened, then stopped. The entire hall heard the absence. Silence can be louder than thunder when everyone has been pretending not to hear something. I backed out of the crawlspace soaked in condensation, hair sticking to my face, robes scorched at one sleeve, diagnostic bracelet glowing faint gold. The Heart Relic rotated above us. For the first time since I had woken under it, the motion looked smooth. Not perfect. Never perfect. But stable. The red coil dimmed. The white split ring vanished. The blue crescent shrank to a thin line. The gold needle held steady. The hall erupted into whispers. King Erwin looked up at the machine, then down at Malrec. "High Priest," he said quietly, "you told me the heart had no mechanisms." Malrec's face had gone gray beneath the powder. "The divine may wear many forms," he said. Lady Mareth lifted the gold cord I had cut from the bypass valve. Did the divine also shut its own emergency system? No one laughed. That made it worse. Malrec looked at me then. Really looked. Not at a servant, not at a scapegoat, not at dirt from the bell tower. At the person who had just translated his fake miracles into maintenance failures in front of the king, the court, the guilds, and half the kingdom. His eyes finally showed fear. The public reversal was complete. He had built his throne on being the only man who could hear the relic's will. Then a disgraced bell servant made the relic stop screaming. Collapse spreads faster than steam when important people realize they were almost embarrassed in public. Almost dying mattered too, obviously. But embarrassment moved the nobles first. Within 1 hour, Lady Mareth sealed the central shrine and ordered a royal technical inquiry. Within 2 hours, the city ward masters submitted 37 delayed complaints about flickering wards, bitter water, overheated healing basins, and unusual sacred vapors they had been politely ignoring for months. Within 3 hours, 6 senior priests claimed they had always supported practical relic care. By sunset, that number had become 14. Courage is apparently contagious when the king is listening. Malrec tried 4 defenses. First, he said I had performed witchcraft. Lady Mareth asked whether witchcraft commonly opened stuck coolant valves using royal authorization and a pry bar. Second, he said the relic had chosen to reveal a deeper mystery through me. The king asked why that mystery included falsified safety records. Third, he said old protocols were symbolic. Tomas, still pale from ringing emergency sequences, quietly placed the 6 years of bell drift notes beside the first builder's law. Fourth, Malrec said he had been protecting the people from panic. That one almost worked. Powerful people love that excuse. It sounds responsible if you do not look closely. Then Lady Mareth read my maintenance log aloud. Not all of it, just the important sequence. Hour 0, found under lower chamber, observed heat and coolant distress. Hour 2, ordered not to touch relic. Hour 16, bell timing correction briefly stabilized flow. Hour 20, formal suspension issued. Hour 22, documentation forbidden. Hour 31, public vents blocked for ceremony. Hour 40, visible coolant vapor called mercy. Hour 46, public distress signs confirmed. Hour 47, emergency bypass found tied shut. Every line had a witness. Every witness had a role. Every role made Malrec smaller. The inquiry moved to the royal audit chamber, a circular room beneath the palace where truth oaths were recorded in blue flame. I was given a clean robe, burned salve, and a chair. The chair felt suspiciously luxurious after 2 days of kneeling. Tomas sat beside me, holding a cup of water with both hands. He had been thanked by the king and looked traumatized by it. "I think His Majesty knows my name now," he whispered. "That happens when you help prevent a royal pressure incident." I preferred being invisible. "No, you didn't." He considered that. "No," he admitted, "I didn't." Across the chamber, Malrec stood without his son's circlet. It was shocking how much smaller he looked without gold around his head. Senior priests avoided standing too close to him, which told me the social execution had begun. Lady Mareth questioned him for 2 hours. Why were maintenance stairs sealed? Why were old protocols removed from training? Why were bell irregularity reports dismissed? Why were ward complaints reclassified as miracles? Why was the emergency bypass tied shut? Why did the ceremony safety record omit 3 known distress signs? Malrec answered with smoke. Tradition, interpretation, symbolism, faith, authority, sacred discretion. Lady Mareth answered with records. Records 1. Eventually, Malrec turned to me. His voice changed, softer, private even in public. Ilyra, he said, surely you understand that institutions cannot change overnight. There are arrangements we might make. Your status could be corrected. Your service record cleansed. A generous stipend. A private appointment. You need not press this further. There it was. The offer. Money, rank, silence. The holy trinity of embarrassed leadership. The room watched me. I thought about the original Ilyra Dane, who had lived 29 years being told her hands were too common to matter. I thought about Tomas hearing the click for years and being told his ears were cursed. I thought about every ward master whose complaints had been turned into theology because one man's authority depended on nobody checking the pipes. I set my cup down. No. Malrec's mouth tightened. I continued, calm and professional, because anger would only give him somewhere to hide. I will assist with emergency stabilization of the Heart Relic. I will document every repair. I will train anyone the Crown assigns. I will not sign a silence oath. I will not accept private payment. I will not say the bypass tied itself shut. And I will not call negligence a mystery. The blue oath flame beside Lady Mareth flickered. Not because I lied. Because I did not. The king leaned back in his chair. For the first time all day, he looked less like a monarch and more like a tired man who had just learned his house had almost burned down because someone banned smoke alarms. High Priest Malrec, he said, you are removed from authority over the heart pending full judgment. Malrec inhaled sharply. The senior priests looked down. No one defended him. That was the part that seemed to hurt him most. Not the accusation, not the evidence, not even the king's order. The silence of people who had benefited from his power and now found it inconvenient to remember him. He looked at me with hatred then. Pure, helpless hatred. I did not look away. He had mistaken maintenance for weakness. He had mistaken obedience for surrender. Most dangerously, he had mistaken a machine's warnings for applause. The consequences had not come because I was cruel. They came because he had spent years building a system where reality was not allowed to interrupt him. Reality interrupted anyway. The first full repair took 11 days. Not one miracle. Not one chant. 11 dirty, exhausting, glorious days of opening sealed panels, draining contaminated coolant, cleaning mineral scale, replacing cracked crystal gaskets, rebalancing bell sequences, clearing vent paths, and creating the first actual maintenance schedule the Royal Temple City had seen in at least 80 years. I was not alone. That mattered. The king assigned 4 lamp keepers, 3 ward technicians, 2 palace metalworkers, 6 bell apprentices, and exactly 1 priest who admitted under oath that he had always wondered why the sacred amber smelled like gear oil. I liked him immediately. Tomas became my timing lead. He tried to refuse the title 5 times. I ignored all 5. Sella took over bell calibration and proved so precise that she could identify tower drift by echo alone. Lady Mareth installed a permanent audit desk beside the lower maintenance ring, which made every priest in the temple walk faster and lie less. Malrec's miracle tablets were removed from public display. Not destroyed. Archived. Lady Mareth said history should be preserved, especially when embarrassing. By the end of the inquiry, The charges against him filled 27 pages. Falsified records, suppression of safety reports, unauthorized sealing of maintenance access, misuse of royal ceremony protocols, reckless endangerment of the king, and spiritual fraud. Spiritual fraud was apparently a real legal category in Veyre. I loved that for him. He was stripped of the sun circlet on the 14th day after the ceremony. No dramatic execution, no dungeon, no revenge spectacle. Just removal. Rank gone. Residence reassigned. Accounts frozen pending damages. Former patrons unavailable. Former followers suddenly devoted to reform. He sent me 3 letters. I returned the first unopened. The second offered apology, though 80% of it was about institutional complexity and the burden of leadership. I returned that one with red correction marks. The third asked me to visit him so we could reconcile for the good of the temple. I sent back a maintenance request form with the box checked, issue not reproducible. Tomas laughed for a full minute when he saw it. That was worth more than gold. As for me, I expected to be dismissed once the crisis passed. That would have been normal. Use the inconvenient person during emergency, then hide them before they become precedent. But Lady Mareth was smarter than that. So was the king. On the 21st day, in the central hall, before the repaired Heart Relic and every person who had watched Malrec fall, King Erwin created a new office. Chief Relic Engineer. Not priest. Not prophet. Engineer. The title sounded strange in the old language, all hard consonants and fresh discomfort. Some nobles looked like they had swallowed lemon peel. Several priests looked personally attacked by the concept of job descriptions. I accepted anyway. My first official acts were simple. I reopened the maintenance stairs. I banned decorative cords within 3 feet of emergency valves. I required daily logs for pressure, heat, mana flow, bell timing, coolant clarity, and vent airflow. I created a rule that any apprentice could report an unusual sound without punishment. Then I made every senior priest attend a 4-hour lecture titled, "The Heart Relic is Sacred, which is why you should stop abusing it." No one enjoyed it. I considered that a sign of educational quality. The bracelet remained mysterious. It still showed symbols instead of numbers. It still refused to explain itself. But as we repaired the heart, it changed. The cracked oval face brightened. The warnings became less frantic. New marks appeared when systems stabilized. A green circle for balanced flow, a silver line for proper venting, a small gold bell for synchronized timing. It did not make me powerful in the usual fantasy way. I did not throw fire. I did not summon swords. I did not awaken a dragon bloodline or defeat a demon lord with one hand. I became powerful because I understood what everyone else had been trained to ignore. Heat. Pressure. Wear. Sound. Records. Responsibility. The kingdom changed slower than the machine. People still left offerings at the heart. They still sang to it. They still bowed when the rings turned at dawn. I did not stop them. Faith was not the enemy. Neglect was. 3 months after the rupture that did not happen, the temple city ran smoother than it had in years. The aqueduct water cleared. The ward flickers stopped. The healing basins held steady. Bell apprentices walked through the lower rings with tool belts instead of fear. Tomas still got nervous around nobles, but he no longer looked at the floor when he spoke. One evening, after we finished calibrating South Bell 3, he stood beside me under the warm copper light and said, "Do you ever miss your old world?" I thought about fluorescent lights, overtime calls, vending machine dinners, and machines that had groaned under neglect while managers asked if repairs could wait until next quarter. "Yes," I said, "some parts." "Were you important there?" I laughed. "No." He looked at the heart, humming steady above the city. "You are here." That sentence stayed with me longer than I expected. Maybe transmigration, was not always about becoming chosen. Maybe sometimes the universe picked up the person everyone overlooked, dropped her under the most important machine in the kingdom, and said, "Fine, you know what to do." I still did not know why I had been brought to Veyre. I did not know why the bracelet chose me. I did not know what happened to the original Ilyra Dane, though I liked to think some part of her remained in my stubbornness, my anger, and the way my hands no longer shook when priests raised their voices. What I did know was this. High Priest Malrec had ordered me to stop touching the relic. So I stopped. For exactly long enough that everyone could see what happened when no one competent was allowed near it. In my old life, I learned that machines do not care about titles. In this one, I learned consequences do not care about robes. And in both lives, the truth was the same. A kingdom can survive without a prophet, but not without maintenance.